Emma had always believed her life was perfect. Married to Ryan for nearly a decade, she had built a life many would envy. Their home was warm and welcoming, their schedules predictable but comfortable, and their interactions tender in their routine familiarity. Ryan was the kind of man who believed actions spoke louder than words. Flowers on anniversaries, fixing a leaky sink without being asked, or brewing her morning coffee just the way she liked. Emma loved him. She truly did. But love, she was learning, didn't always shield you from the quiet ache of longing. It started small, a fleeting sense of dissatisfaction that crept in during the silence of their shared evenings. Ryan, exhausted from work, would settle into the couch, scrolling through his phone or flipping through channels. Emma would sit beside him, pretending to read or scroll through her own phone, but the weight of unspoken words filled the space between them. She missed the spark, the passion that once lit up their lives. She missed the nights when Ryan would look at her like she was the only thing that mattered. Her days, once bustling with creativity and purpose, had begun to feel monotonous. The art classes she taught were fulfilling, but only just enough. Emma had dreams, aspirations she had tucked away to focus on their life together. Yet, those dreams had begun knocking on the door of her consciousness, louder with each passing day. It was during one of those art classes that she met Jason. He was bold, charismatic, and his charm felt effortless. Unlike Ryan's quiet stability, Jason had an energy that pulled people in. He wasn't conventionally handsome, but there was something magnetic about the way he carried himself, the way he spoke as if the world existed only to be conquered. He had come in as part of a corporate team-building exercise, clearly uninterested in the painting but intrigued by her. His compliments were casual at first, about her teaching style, her choice of colors, the way she moved around the room with an air of quiet confidence. But there was an undertone, a subtle electricity that Emma couldn't ignore. Jason was everything Ryan wasn't. He noticed her in a way that felt intoxicating. Where Ryan would leave for work with a quick kiss and a distracted goodbye, Jason's gaze lingered. He asked questions that felt personal, deliberate, as though he was genuinely curious about who she was beneath the layers of responsibility and routine. Emma found herself drawn to him, even as she told herself it was harmless. She replayed their conversations in her mind, analyzing his words, his tone, the way his eyes seemed to hold hers just a little too long. She hated how much she looked forward to seeing him again, how his attention made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. Still, she told herself it was nothing. She loved Ryan, and what she felt for Jason was just a passing infatuation, a symptom of boredom rather than a reflection of her heart. But the pull was undeniable, and she began finding excuses to bump into Jason, at the cafe near the studio, during gallery openings, anywhere their paths might cross. Jason, for his part, didn't hold back. He was respectful at first, careful not to overstep, but it was clear he was interested. He listened when she spoke, his questions digging deeper than she was used to. He remembered the little things, her favorite artist, the way she scrunched her nose when she was concentrating. And Emma, against her better judgment, allowed herself to enjoy it. She told herself it was harmless, that it didn't mean anything, but deep down, she knew she was walking a dangerous line. Every time she laughed at Jason's jokes or felt the warmth of his gaze, she felt a pang of guilt. But the guilt wasn't enough to stop her. In Jason's presence, Emma felt like the woman she used to be, vibrant, confident, full of possibilities. She wasn't just Ryan's wife or the dependable art teacher. She was Emma, a woman with dreams and desires she had almost forgotten. And so, the perfect life Emma had built with Ryan began to crack, though neither of them knew it yet. Emma's meetings with Jason became less coincidental and more deliberate. What started as casual conversations evolved into moments she looked forward to with an intensity she couldn't explain. He had a way of making her feel seen, like her words carried weight, her thoughts mattered. When he complimented her, it felt different, not like Ryan's comfortable reassurances, but as if Jason were peeling back layers and discovering something in her she had long forgotten existed. One evening, after a particularly long and stressful day, Jason texted her. She had given him her number, reasoning it was for professional purposes since he was interested in attending more of her workshops. But this message wasn't about art. It was simple. You seemed a bit off today. Want to grab a coffee and talk? Emma hesitated, staring at the text. Her heart raced. She told herself it was innocent, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. She replied with a shaky hand, agreeing to meet him at a quiet cafe across town. When she arrived, Jason was already waiting, his easy smile instantly disarming her. They talked about everything, her frustrations, her dreams, the monotony she felt creeping into her life. Jason listened, leaning in, his gaze unwavering. And when he spoke, his words were like a balm, soothing the restlessness she had carried for so long. I don't think you give yourself enough credit, he said. You're talented, Emma. Brilliant, even. You deserve to feel appreciated, to have someone who really sees you. His words struck a chord deep within her. Emma felt a pang of guilt for sitting here with him, sharing pieces of herself that she hadn't even shared with Ryan in years. But at the same time, she couldn't bring herself to leave. The meeting stretched longer than either of them intended. When Jason walked her to her car, the air between them shifted. The conversation had lulled, replaced by a silence heavy with unspoken tension. Jason stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. Emma froze, torn between the pull of the moment and the weight of everything it meant. I shouldn't, she whispered, her voice trembling. You're allowed to feel something, Emma, Jason replied softly. His words felt like permission she hadn't even realized she was seeking. Before she could think, before she could reason, she let herself fall into the moment. His lips brushed hers, tentative at first, then deepening as her hesitation gave way. For a fleeting instant, Emma felt an exhilarating rush, freedom, desire, a glimpse of something she couldn't quite name. But it didn't last. As they pulled away, reality came crashing back. Emma stepped back, her breath shaky, her mind racing. I need to go, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason didn't stop her, though his eyes lingered, full of something she couldn't decipher. Driving home, Emma's hands gripped the wheel tightly, her thoughts a whirlwind of regret and longing. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She couldn't believe what she had allowed herself to do. When she walked into the house, Ryan was sitting on the couch, his face lighting up when he saw her. Hey, you're home. How was your day? He asked, his voice warm, familiar. Emma forced a smile, her heart sinking under the weight of her guilt. It was fine, she said, her voice hollow. She kissed him on the cheek, the gesture automatic, devoid of the passion she had just experienced with Jason. That night, as Ryan slept beside her, Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She replayed the kiss in her mind, torn between the thrill it had brought her and the devastation it could cause. She hated herself for crossing a line she could never uncross, for betraying the man who had given her everything. But more than anything, she hated how much she wanted to feel it again. Emma's guilt became a constant companion, shadowing her every move. The kiss haunted her, playing on a loop in her mind. At first, she convinced herself it was a mistake, a fleeting moment of weakness that meant nothing. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. Her interactions with Ryan grew strained. She avoided his touch, fearing he might sense the betrayal lingering on her skin. His usual affection, once a source of comfort, now felt suffocating. She caught herself pulling away when he leaned in to kiss her or resting her hand on his for too long. Is everything okay? Ryan asked one evening as they sat in the living room. His voice was gentle, but his eyes searched hers, filled with concern. Emma forced a smile, her heart thudding in her chest. Of course. Just a little tired, that's all. But he wasn't convinced. Ryan had always been perceptive, and Emma's sudden distance didn't go unnoticed. He started making more of an effort, surprising her with dinner, planning small weekend outings, even leaving little notes for her like he used to. Each gesture only made the guilt heavier, pressing down on her until it felt unbearable. Meanwhile, Jason remained in the background, never pushing, but always present. He texted occasionally, short, thoughtful messages that reminded her of their connection. She tried to ignore them, to put distance between them, but the pull was undeniable. One afternoon, Jason texted her again. "I miss talking to you. Can we meet? Just to talk." Emma stared at the message, her stomach knotting. She knew she should delete it, block his number, and focus on repairing the damage she had done to her marriage. But instead, she found herself typing a reply, "I can't. This has to stop." Jason's response came quickly. "I understand. But if you ever change your mind, you know where to find me." The ambiguity of his words lingered, leaving a door open that Emma knew she should have closed. As the days turned into weeks, Emma's paranoia grew. She constantly felt like Ryan might find out, like the guilt written across her face was obvious to everyone around her. Every time he looked at her with his steady, loving gaze, she flinched inwardly, waiting for the moment he would ask the one question she couldn't answer honestly. The strain between them continued to grow. Arguments that would have once been resolved with a laugh now stretched into silence. Ryan became more withdrawn, unsure of how to reach her. One night, as Emma sat alone in the kitchen, staring at her untouched cup of tea, Ryan walked in. He leaned against the counter, his face etched with worry. "Emma, I feel like I'm losing you," he said quietly. His words hit her like a blow, and tears welled in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, to tell him everything, but the words caught in her throat. How could she explain what Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her world was on the brink of collapse. Every interaction with Ryan felt like walking a tightrope, her balance growing more precarious with each passing day. She hated what she had done, but the guilt wasn't enough to erase it. It lingered, heavy and unrelenting, dictating her every thought and action. One evening, Ryan suggested a dinner date. "Just the two of us," he said with a smile that reminded her of the early days of their relationship. Emma hesitated, unsure if she could face the intimacy of a night focused solely on them, but she agreed. She owed him that much. At the restaurant, Ryan was charming, attentive, and determined to make her laugh. For a moment, Emma allowed herself to relax, to pretend everything was fine. But beneath the surface, the tension never truly left. She noticed the way Ryan's eyes lingered on her, searching for something he couldn't name. "Emma," he said suddenly, his voice low and serious, "I've been trying to figure out how to say this, but I feel like there's a distance between us lately. Like you're somewhere else, and I can't reach you." Her heart stopped, panic rising in her chest. She fumbled for a response, but Ryan pressed on. "I don't know if it's work, or if I've done something wrong, but I need to know what's going on. I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not." Emma's throat tightened, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on her, begging to be released. But the fear of what it might do to them held her back. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's not you, Ryan. It's me. I've just been a loss lately. I don't know how to explain it." Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Then let me help you. Whatever it is, we can face it together. But I need you to let me in, Emma. Please." His words cut through her, leaving her feeling raw and exposed. She wanted to tell him everything, to unburden herself of the secret that had consumed her. But the thought of seeing his trust shattered, of losing the man who had stood by her through everything, was too much to bear. "I'm trying," she said finally, tears welling in her eyes. "I promise I'm trying." Ryan nodded, though the sadness in his expression told her he wasn't entirely convinced. That night, as they lay in bed, Emma stared at the ceiling, her mind a whirlwind of regret and longing. She knew she couldn't keep living like this, torn between two versions of herself. But the path forward felt impossible to navigate. In the darkness, she reached for Ryan's hand, intertwining her fingers with his. He stirred slightly, his grip tightening around hers. It was a small gesture, but it reminded her of the foundation they had built together, the life they had shared. Emma didn't know if she could fix what had been broken, or if the cracks in their relationship would ever fully heal. But for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to hope. Hope that, somehow, they could find their way back to each other.